Greetings, friends, and welcome to Mind the Moment in Everyday Life. Each month, we take a theme and explore how mindfulness can support us in bringing that theme to life in our everyday lives. Our theme for this month of January is mindfully setting intentions for the new year. I'm your host, John Roberts, from Living Well Community, which is the world of wellness classes and on-demand programming created for you by Point 32 Health and its family of companies, including Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Tufts Health Plan. Now, I'm thrilled to be joined all this month by your mindfulness guide, the amazing Zeenat Potia. Welcome, Zeenat.
Thank you, John, for that very kind introduction, and a warm hello to everybody who's here.
Now, Zeenat, last week you shared some thoughts with us about how we might set mindful intentions for ourselves in the new year. And folks, we'd love to hear about your own experiences. So please do open up the chat. Let us know what intentions you've been setting for yourselves, and also what questions might have arisen for you while you've been setting and trying to keep those mindful intentions. What has been working? Where might you have encountered difficulties? And while folks are thinking and typing, Zeenat, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind reminding us what a mindful intention actually is, particularly for folks who may not have been able to join us last week.
Sure, John. It might be helpful to define the word intention. And so the word intention has to do with purpose, and it comes from the Old English, French, Latin root of the word intender, which means, or implies rather, to stretch. So intentions can guide the way we think, feel, behave, and act. They can help us grow and develop towards something purposeful. So you can think of intentions as planting seeds, or as a North Star or the light from a lighthouse, guiding us in the direction of our highest aspirations. They're quite different from goals in that they're not finite or outcome oriented. Rather, they're meant to inform the process, to inform our journey.
You know, Zeenat, somebody who's watching says, I love the concept of setting daily intentions, but in practice, it turns out that my first step has to be to set up a system to remember to do this. I'm wondering if you have some thoughts on that. How do we actually remember to use the intentions that we set?
Okay, so a couple of thoughts. So one is to have a system to set them might be, especially if you're working with daily intentions, is first thing in the morning when you wake up, before you go to whatever the routine or the habit patterns might be, to open the day by setting an intention. So then that's the time the intention for the day is set. If you're doing one for the whole year, you might set aside some time to reflect and to come up with a word or an intention for the year. And then how to remember, I'm thinking of Vietnamese and Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh, who had this phrase called the mindfulness bell. So you can think of it as, during the day, there are so many moments where we're lost or we're occupied, shall we say, both literally and in doing tasks that we need to function and exist as human beings, and then where we just find ourselves gone or disconnected from the present moment. So when there is that moment of awareness of, oh, what am I doing? Wait a second. That can be like the mindfulness bell. So anytime the mindfulness bell goes off might be a time to kind of just reconnect, just lightly touch that intention that you had set, either for the day or the year or however time period that you're working in.
Zeenat, I'm also reading this book, Mindful Presence and Leadership by Christine O'Shaughnessy. And in it, she talks about this anecdote about somebody who writes meditative phrases on the back of their work badge so that they have to keep sort of confronting those phrases throughout the day. And I'm thinking that could also be a way that one might continue to engage with the intention they set if they just have that sort of in their face all the time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And making it visible, writing it down somewhere where it's visible, sounds like a really good strategy so that we don't, because of course we forget. One of the meanings of the word mindfulness is to remember. So it's very apt.
So one of our participants says that their daily intentions that they've been setting include having a positive attitude, being kind to themselves and others, and gratitude. Somebody says, my intention is connection. I have a tendency to be self-sufficient in nearly every aspect of my life, so this intention inspires me to purposefully reach out to others or pause to engage with those that I encounter throughout my day. Beautiful.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. The thing about the intentions, just reading them and hearing you read them, John, is that they are just so admirable. They're so aspirational. They're wholesome. They're wholesome because they have the wish to be of benefit to self and others.
That's right. And I wonder if I could share one of my own, Zeenat. So I've been setting the intention for myself to try to give my 4.5-year-old son the benefit of the doubt. And what I mean by that is if you like throw something across the room, my intention is not to immediately jump to thinking this kid is being a jerk and I need to punish him, but rather trying to think, okay, well, maybe he's in the grip of some sort of emotional reaction and maybe I can help him navigate that. Or maybe this is part of a game he's playing and he doesn't realize that what he's doing appears to me to be destructive. And maybe I could try to understand the rules of this game that he's playing so that I can come in more with like constructive criticism as opposed to coming in hot with like, no, you can't do that. No, you're being bad. But I'll tell you, this has been
Mm.
difficult to do
Uh-huh.
because
Uh-huh.
when I see my son doing something which I perceive to be destructive, it throws me into the state of being stressed out.
Yeah.
And when I'm stressed out, as sometimes people say, I don't rise to the occasion as much as I fall back on my programming or that which has been modeled for me in my life. And just speaking for myself, I came from the type of traditional upbringing where we were sent to our rooms or sent to the principal's office before anyone decided to ask us what we were thinking or feeling if we
Mm.
were to do something that sort of upsets an authority figure. And so if we have that sort of tendencies, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about how we might navigate, sort of rising to the occasion instead of just falling back on maybe our worser instincts.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that, a very raw and real example, John. I think that's a gift that you give the community is sharing from your lived experience, trying it out and then seeing what happens. And there's already just so much awareness because you've seen the cause and effect. You've seen that setting an intention in and of itself, it inclines the mind, but then we need effort and we need commitment, and it almost needs to be continuous and consistent, and the commitment to effect change guided by that intention. And really, it comes back to one of the most, I want to say, simple instructions of mindfulness, which is to pause. The pausing, and especially when you notice the reactivity or the trigger. So you notice a trigger, just pausing with it and having that mindfulness bell can create some space to then allow choice to act or move or to speak in a way that is aligned with one's intention.
Yeah, I suppose there is you can do a lifetime of good in just 1 second of pausing. Zena, maybe this is a good point for me to invite you to take us into the first practice. So just so folks know, in each of these sessions, we'll be giving you 2 mindfulness practices. One is going to become a sit-down practice, which you can do with us during the session, and the second practice will be we might call a take-home practice, designed to help you build up these sorts of mindful habits in your daily life. So Zena, I'd love to invite you to guide us in that sit-down practice now, if you don't mind.
Thank you, John. Okay, so just finding a posture that is supportive for you in this moment. And so it can look different for different folks. So you might be sitting, you might be wanting to stand, you might, if you're in a cozy environment, want to lie down. Just anything that allows your body to relax and soften. And if you are sitting, then finding some uplift in the spine, relaxing the torso and the shoulders. And if you're comfortable, closing the eyes. And anything I offer, Please consider it as a suggestion. If it doesn't suit you or work for you, to let it go or to modify as needed. You might want to take 1 or 2 deep breaths and just sigh them out. Just acknowledging the reality of living a human life in a human body. It is imperfect. It's not easy to navigate or to be in, regardless of one's circumstances. And yes, some folks are in circumstances that are, one could say, on a material aspect, way more challenging than others. But we each have to reckon and meet our reality. Whatever it is true for you right now is valid, is true, and it matters. It's real. So just setting in with that intention. I'm worthy, I belong. And this too is our practice, to fully embrace the truth of how things are in this moment. All of our parts, the grumpy part, maybe it's a part that's getting over being ill, a part that's eager to learn, a part that wants to heal, a part that wants some relaxation. All of the many parts that might be here within each of our systems, making space for them. This practice of working with intentions honors these parts in their various states that they're in. It's not trying to steamroll to some perfect state. That's not why we're here. We're here to meet these parts with curiosity, with honesty, with compassion. So softening into all of this. And opening the door to connection, connecting with the breath, with sounds, with your heart, with sensations. And noticing the movement, noticing things coming and going. And spending some time mindfully with this being, with kindness and curiosity. And if a particular part is very loud, and this is not the time and place where you are able to engage with it, you can simply ask it to relax back from a place of curiosity and mindfulness and compassion. Ask it whether it would be willing to step back a little bit. Keep shining that light of awareness. Continuing the practice, and I'd like to read something about intentions by Thich Nhat Hanh. Volition or intention is the ground of all our actions. If we think that the way for us to be happy is, and I'm changing the example here from the book, is to help a neighbor, everything we do or say will be directed toward realizing that goal. Even when we sleep, our consciousness will continue to work on it. Or suppose we believe that all our suffering and the suffering of our family has been brought about by someone who wronged us in the past. We believe we will only be happy if we inflict harm on that person. Our life is motivated solely by the desire for revenge, and everything we say, everything we plan is to punish that person. That's the push, that's the inclination that will happen. So we can think of nutriments of what do we want to give our energy and our attention to in terms of our intentions, because that will kind of steer the boat in a certain direction, even when we're asleep. I find this very interesting to think about and to reflect on. So here comes the bell, and please continue to practice with the sound till you don't hear it anymore, to mark the end of our formal mindfulness meditation. Thank you for your practice, everybody, and for your kind attention.
Zeenat, I have to say, I want to thank you for, at the beginning of your practice, you said something along the lines of setting the intention in the practice to know that we are worthy of respect, love, and that everyone else is as well by extension. So I just want to thank you for pointing that out. And something about the Thich Nhat Hanh quote also made me think about, we were talking about how do you remember to be intentional, to be mindful? And I was imagining when you're at a museum, and sometimes if you've been at a museum and you like a work of art too much, you might get a little too close, and there might be a little bit of a ding that goes off. And I feel like as we're doing practices like this one, we are inclining the mind to have that sort of system set up for us. And it just kind of happens automatically, where when you approach something, a situation that you might not have otherwise acted mindfully in, somehow this little ding goes out. It's like if you're getting too close to the fire of perhaps reactivity, because you feel the heat more quickly and you know to step back, take the pause that you mentioned earlier, Zeenat, and then maybe collect yourself before proceeding. Would you mind saying a few words about the take-home practice that you'll be recommending that we do this week?
Sure. So the take-home practice is to, at the end of each day, to reflect on and perhaps write down if you feel so inclined. That's an extra step, but if you can, it can be so useful, using, especially since we're doing so much with the digital world these days, to actually have a pen in one's hand and to write, old school, one or more ways in which you've aligned with your intention. Or you could do it in the morning and reflect on the day before. And so it's celebrating where the practice of intention has been supportive and has been of benefit, can be really useful in kind of giving us some confidence. It can give us some bolsters, because things are difficult. It's hard to stick with these practices, and so it gives us some positive regard to keep going.
Thank you, Zena, for that. I'd love to hear next week how that goes for folks. Now, towards the end of your meditation, you were also mentioning something about nutrients, the way that we can sort of nourish ourselves through these practices. And I was thinking about the types of nutrients that we could feed ourselves, and some might be not helpful, like maybe it's like using social media too much, or maybe just dwelling in thoughts of people who've slighted us, or those. But those are sorts of nutrients that we could give ourselves, while other sorts of nutrients might be mindfulness practice, doing this take-home practice that you mentioned. I wonder if there's other things that you bring into your own life that to sort of nourish yourself, so that you are taking in what you might consider to be the right, mental nutrients or mindful nutrients.
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. I think the sense doors is a way that I work with that a lot. So sense impressions, is this because we're moving through the world and things are coming at us. And so I find the quieter my system gets, the less it wants to take in. So, for instance, I live with others and travel with others. So in a car, the people who I'm with like to have the news or music all the time, and that's not a nutriment for me. For me, it's like not helpful for my nervous system. I like the quiet, so I make that request. So that's an kind of silly, simple example, but
What I also think, there's a very difficult concept for me in mindfulness called uh, sympathetic joy. And I feel like in some of these situations where you're taking turns, which is something that we teach our son to do, like, well, we're to take turns. And if it's his turn to listen to something that I would prefer not to listen to, I do try to focus on, yeah, the joy that he's feeling in getting to take his turn, even if it's not really being very helpful for me in that moment.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. That's the teaching interdependence and leaning into community and compromise. It's good.
Easier said than done. Now, Zeenat, we've been talking about how one might set intentions for their day or for the week, like, you might, or for the year. You might wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to set the intention to be more patient, or this month I'm going to set the intention to be more patient. But I've been thinking about this since last week, and I suppose it's the case that an intention actually precedes every action we take, even very small ones, and even if we're not aware of it on a conscious level. Like, for example, anyone attending this session right now made the intention to attend it, whether or not they actually articulated that intention to themselves. So does that sound like that is the case? And if so, to what extent should we be, or even can we be, paying attention to those micro intentions which happen throughout the day? And is there a way that our sort of bigger daily macro intention might inform or support or alter those micro intentions?
This is a very layered question, and I love it. I love the word micro intentions because it makes it very accessible and possible and approachable. Like we can all do this, and we can all do this together. And so I'll just offer like the three macro intentions that are part of, wise intention practice that we might take them because they do consciously or unconsciously influence us. They're working on us even, let's say, when we're asleep, like the quote from Thich Nhat Hanh said, and like you described, John. So kindness, compassion, and surrender, or letting go our need to control everything, or letting go, hatred or ignorance or delusion. Those are kind of like the big ones that we're all invited and welcome to partake in and to take up as a way to live if it resonates. And then the micro ones, at any time we can kind of see, oh, does this align with the bigger ones? You can kind of do these little check-ins. And sometimes it can be, deliberate. And sometimes it's okay to hold it kind of more lightly as well. I think there's so much, there can be so much pressure for us to be better and kind of like the self-help realm. And so maybe just backing off a little bit and trusting oneself. Like, okay, I've set this intention, or I've set these intentions, and I'm going to do my best. And of course, you're going to put in the effort. And we talked about the commitment and the continuous kind of showing up. But being a little bit soft around it, because I think it's important to give ourselves room to be imperfect and to fail. That's how we learn. And in some ways, that's how we deepen our intentions. So in some sense, I'm giving permission to everybody, including myself, to do this imperfectly.
I think that's great, and I feel like sometimes the bar is raised quite high. I remember sitting with a mindfulness teacher who is one of these people who really dedicated their lives to mindfulness, and he was suggesting that if when you go into somebody's house, you should be careful, like not to like touch anything, not to like pick up a book, not to like move something, because that in a way is like really imposing yourself. And I was like, that's a great, it's a great intention to have to like not mess with somebody's space, and yet I still find myself really wanting to pick up that book when I go into somebody's house. It's not going to be perfect. But Zena, thank you so much for your guidance today. Now we're lucky enough to be able to continue exploring this with you next week. But for now, I will simply thank you for
Yeah,
everything.
thank you for having me.
Of course,
And have a
of
good
course.
week, everyone.
Just a final word before we go from E.M. Forster in his novel Where Angels Fear to Tread. Quote, "You told me once that we shall be judged by our intentions, not by our accomplishments. I thought it a grand remark, but we must intend to accomplish, not sit intending on a chair." End quote. So let's get out and intend, and include amongst those intentions the intention to turn intention into action. We hope to see you next week, folks. We'll be back here with Zeenat. Until then, go forth and be excellent to each other.